Hello, and welcome back to the program. Uh, I am your host, Rrr Mmmm, and I'm here with Stubble McShave. And today we're going to be continuing our series on the Wheel of Time. Today we're going to be focusing on the top 5 things we're most looking forward to in the series after watching the amazing trailer that was put out a few weeks ago, as well as taking a look at the soundtrack, which just is absolutely amazing and was created especially for the Wheel of Time series. Thank you for joining me today, Stubble. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm just jolly good. And it's a wonderful time.
That's good to hear. I'm doing great. And of course, there's so much anticipation for everyone because this upcoming week is the week where there's going to be previews and the reveal of the first episode of the live action Wheel of Time. There is just so much buzz about it and everybody is talking about it. And it's great to see that because it is such an amazing story. But the first thing that we're going to talk about today is this incredible soundtrack that was composed by Lauren Balfe for the Wheel of Time. Mr. Balfe is an incredible composer. He has done such an amazing job in doing his homework and looking at what's important to the fans of the Wheel of Time and what type of music the fans like. Why do you think he decided to look into what the personal tastes might be of the fandom for Wheel of Time to create this incredible soundtrack, Stubble?
Oh, I think he from what the interview I saw with him, he himself read the books and he knew there was a fan community out there that was very passionate. So I think he was very eager to do as good a job as he could to please the fans and do a great score. And in the interview, he also talked about how uh, both he and the showrunner Rafe Judkins wanted to have a different type, not go in the traditional way of a traditional score, but do something different and have more of a world music feel to the whole thing. And they have a language, the old tongue that they use to uh, for chanting choirs instead of just having uh, the normal Latin chants that you have in other movies and TV series and so on. So um, I think he's not a passionate fan, but he knows the fan base and he has read the books, and so I think there he and as well, Rafe Judkins is also a fan who's read the book several times. So they want to make it as good as possible for the fans.
And Rafe Guard Rudkins is the showrunner for the TV show, right?
Yes.
Stubble. And it's very interesting. The interview that both you and I are referring to is an interview that was done by the Dusty Wheel, which is another incredible resource that Stubble has provided to me. And you should absolutely, if you're watching this, feel free to go and check out their channel as well. If you're not already looking at the Facebook and Discord servers for the Wheel of Time. One thing that I really liked about this interview was that Mr. Balfe, he said that he wanted to stay away from the typical soundtrack that you usually hear for big science fiction or fantasy productions. It's normally these huge orchestral movements. And he wanted to create a more intimate folk and, as you said, world music sound. And I think that that's very profound because it's exactly the point that Jordan was doing when he wanted to incorporate a world feel, in the cultural points in his books. So I think that, as a composer, his approach to creating a soundtrack for the Wheel of Time series was spot on. But I also think it's very interesting how much work he had to do, because the Wheel of Time is not, a skimpy story. There's many, many characters, and he created individual themes for each character, which I find astonishing. What did you think about that, Stubble?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that they've gone to those lengths to create the music for the show, and I don't think they mentioned that in that interview, but from what I know, they will both release the themes that what has been released now on it's on Spotify and YouTube Music and so on, and but they're also going to do 4 albums for the first series, so that will depict the music for the whole series. So if they're doing that for every season, it will be a lot of soundtrack that's being released to the fans and for everyone else as well.
Yes, it certainly will. One thing I like about the fact that he's doing this is because it's going to create a certain ambiance for each season. And I think that having that tone, or setting a different tone for each part of the journey, is pretty significant, and, can really create a different feeling for the viewer as they're listening to this music, which, to be fair, the composer describes it as, or at least for the parts that are not instrumental, as an opera done in the old tongue, which is just phenomenal, to be able to take the approach of opera and use that as a form of musical expression for this series. Certainly tells you that this is no ordinary series soundtrack, is it?
No, they're going all out on this one when it comes to soundtrack and everything else as well. The showrunner said, and this has nothing to do with the music. He said that every 2 episodes they are like one movie, so they're moving to different type of locations every 2 episodes. So he was doing 4 movies back to back, more or less, and I think the music will complement that. Maybe we'll have a little slightly different feel for the different types of environments we're going to see.
Yes, and that's so important, isn't it? Having that sense. And this is, I think it's very interesting, because I think that, like Balth, who is the composer, Lauren Balth, um, when we at least when I'm listening to the audiobook, which is what I'm doing, I listen to the audiobook, I do have a sense of what I think the music or what might be playing in the background would sound like. And I think a lot of fans have a sense, or an impression of what might be the right fit for a series like this. And Lauren, very interestingly enough, kind of compared, or perhaps it was the interviewer who compared some of the sounds, or some of the compilation of the music, to that from the Gladiator soundtrack that was made by Hans Zimmer. And I do feel that there are some similarities to it. I mean, what do you think about that?
I don't remember that part, but I wouldn't be surprised because he was a prodigy of Hans Zimmer. He was a student under Hans Zimmer, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. And so he's an up and coming big composer. He's working on Mission Impossible 7 and 8 now as we speak, and so he's on the big movies as well. And but I think this was probably the most difficult score to do of everything he's done so far. And yeah, I can totally see the similarities with Hans Zimmer and some parts of Gladiator.
Yes, and another very interesting thing that I found, which made sense, was that Lauren mentioned that he used photos for inspiration, and of course, I would like to think perhaps the photos that he used for inspiration were from the television series. And if that was part of his inspiration, I can see how he would be inspired by that type of conceptual artwork for the TV series, because as you already mentioned, what they did in regards to the production design is just absolutely incredible. And we are going to talk about that a little bit later. But he also mentioned bringing in Peter Cox from the band Go West, and, like being very fond of Peter's abilities as a vocalist, but also even after Peter sang or worked on some arrangements, Lorne had to go back in and kind of move things around to a point where he felt it would make sense, in the final compositions, which is even more work as far as I'm concerned. But he mentioned he wanted to be fair and honest, and that he also felt that there was sort of this heritage in the books that he wanted to preserve. And that was part of his inspiration, let's say, for making these incredible compositions that he's done. And so what I was going to say is that for anybody who's listening to this, at the very least, go ahead and check out Lorne Balfe's incredible soundtrack for the Wheel of Time series. And if you hear people singing in these songs in the soundtrack, they're singing in the Old Tongue, which is its own language. And although you did mention that, what was interesting was that Lorne said that he wanted to stay away from the languages that we were familiar with, and just kind of focus on the Old Tongue to add to the authenticity of the world. Did you recognize that it was Old Tongue, Stubble, the first time you heard it, or not?
I don't recognize from the sound. I know some words and some words because the language isn't very much. It's featured in the names of stuff, but there's not much conversation in the Old Tongue in the books. But so I didn't recognize any words, so to speak, except a word here and there that I recognize. But yeah, so I'm not an expert in the Old Tongue. I know a few words, and that's mostly in connection to certain types of titles or certain types of events or things like that. So I don't know the conversational Old Tongue, so a word here and there I would recognize, but not the whole thing.
Well, I nor do I, Stubble. I also do not know the Old Tongue. But it doesn't stop us from enjoying this, does it?
No. And in the books, the Old Tongue, it was not like Tolkien. He hadn't constructed a whole language with a complete grammar 100%. It was more like Klingon in Star Trek. It was 80% finished, but it wasn't completely finished. But with the TV series, they have a language expert that has finished it. So it is a complete language now.
Yes, and I believe that he mentioned that he worked with this language expert. Am I correct on that, Stubble?
Yeah, he helped with the words in the choirs, and the composer mentioned also that sometimes they had an established musical score without the voices, but sometimes they had to change the musical score to fit the words as well. So, but they managed it well.
They certainly did, and I think that that's when you really get to appreciate the effort that was put in to provide a quality soundtrack and composition for all of us to enjoy. And just even listening to it puts you into this fantastic world. And I love that he did that for us, because I'm hoping that eventually when let's say they redo the audiobooks, maybe they can pull some of his compositions and use it in the background, as the music for the Wheel of Time audiobooks. Let's say if they redo them at some point, it would be great to have his compositions in there. And I think that would very much elevate at least the audiobook that I'm listening to, which is very good. And I certainly am not disappointed in it whatsoever. But recently I've noticed that audiobooks can use either some of the voice actors that we're familiar with from the movies, or even the traditional soundtracks that we know. So
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting, and it would be nice to kind of see that or hear it, so to speak, going
F-
forward. But I think that I want to see how everybody reacts to it in placement in the live action series. And I have a feeling that they're going to say, strongly associate it with just the overall feel of the story. And I'm very excited for that, because it's just really a beautiful soundtrack, isn't it?
Yes, but you mentioned the audiobooks there, and I don't know if you know this, but Rosalind Pike has just recorded the Eye of the World
No,
as
I
an
didn't
audiobook.
know that, and I'm so glad you told me.
I heard a sample from it. She's very good. I prefer the original,
Mhm.
but that may be because I'm used to them. I've listened to them a few times and in a few other books, and I love Michael Kramer. He reads 80% or 90% of the first book, and I love his voice. His wife will be more featured in later books uh, because she has the female point of views.
Yes, I see
So
what you're saying.
yeah.
And that's very interesting. I definitely am. Now that you have mentioned that Rosalind Pike has done and the audiobook of The Eye of the World, I'm going to go and listen to that one, Stubble.
Yeah, I thought you read it slightly slower than Michael Kramer did, but
Hmm.
she was very good. But I still prefer Michael Kramer, but that may be because I'm used to it. I don't know.
Well, you know something, it's very interesting to talk about these editions of the book, because when you're reading the book yourself, and as you mentioned to me before, it's a very different experience taking the book and having it in your hand and sitting down and diving into the world, on your own, versus listening to these audiobooks. You are kind of getting impressions and nuances from the reader themselves, the person who's doing the audiobook part. So it does give you a different interpretation, because like it or not, there is going to be some sort of change in the way that the story might be perceived ever so slightly,
Yeah,
because of the person who is doing that audiobook. But that's fine with me. And I'm okay with it. I think I'm almost very curious to hear Rosalind Pike's version, because now she is obviously one of the main characters in the live action series. So I wonder if I have enough time to listen to her do it before the series comes out on the 18th.
I'm sure there's some samples, a minute or two samples. You just can get a feeling for how she would sound.
Yes, and I've enjoyed hearing her sound anyway, because she's the narrator uh for a good portion of the trailer, which we're going to talk about, and which I guess maybe we could go into right now and start to talk about this incredible trailer. And am I correct in saying that we might have a few spoilers in this video, Stubble?
Uh, it will mainly be world building spoilers. It will not be plot related.
Okay, so for
So
those of you who do watch this video, just be aware that there might be a few world building spoilers in here, but nothing plot related. But we did just want to give you a heads up about that before we look at the trailer for The Wheel of Time. And it is the second trailer that dropped a few weeks ago. It's the official trailer from Prime Video. And I must say that this is probably the best looking trailer I have ever seen. What about you, Stubble?
oh, there's a lot of good trailers out there, but I really enjoyed this trailer, and it showed a lot of things that I'm excited about. But some of the things you will have great context of, but some things that's introduced from book 2 and book 3, maybe you don't have as much context of what they're about. But I think I think you mentioned earlier that you appreciated the trailer better after you had read or listened to the book, that you know what certain things are now.
Yeah, it's certainly a completely different experience because now it doesn't look like, I think that it's not necessarily everybody's experience. But for me, when I first viewed it, I immediately had my own biases about what this story must be about. And I think that that's very interesting because perhaps people who are well read in the science fiction realm, which I'd like to think I am well read in the science fiction fantasy realm, I do come in with biases about when I see a story or a clip about what must be happening in the story, and who perhaps is the most important stakeholder, and even who the bad guys are, which is something huge for me, because sometimes whether someone is good or bad can be up for interpretation depending upon the context in the story. So when I first saw that trailer, it is very true. I looked at it, and I'm completely fine with it. But then after I, read, I'd say about halfway through the book and watched the trailer, it had a completely different meaning for me. And I have to say, I'm much more fascinated and interested in a lot of the topics and the meaning behind what Jordan was trying to do. And for me, what what I want everyone to know as they're listening to this, Stubble and I are going to talk about the top 5 things that, after seeing the trailer, we're most looking forward to in the series, and we're going to count them down from 5 to 1. But for me, I immediately, just even looking at the effort that was put into this series, was just right away grabbed by the main character, and these costumes and the production design of this series stands out right away. Even when the main character opens her eyes and starts to explain to you as the viewer what's going on, and the significance of the fact that she has the ability to wield a power and the responsibility that comes along with that. It's so beautifully done, Stubble. It's just incredibly rich, and it feels very, it has a lot of substance to it. I really liked how they set the tone right away at the beginning of the trailer.
Yes. And if we're talking about the beginning of the trailer, that's one of my that's my number 5.
Oh,
and
okay.
and that and that is and that are is or are the oaths that Moraine speaks, and those are to speak no word that is not true, and to make no weapon with one man, or in the TV show one person may kill another. And then they cut the third oath short because that's pretty long, and that's never to use the one power as a weapon. That's where they cut it in the trailer, but the whole oath is never to use the one power as a weapon except against dark friends or shadowspawn, or in the last extreme defense of your life or the life of your warder or another Aes Sedai. But they couldn't have all that in the trailer. But I was very glad the first time I saw the trailer. I was very glad that they had that, because that meant that we would get flashbacks, because she takes her oaths many years before the events of the books. So we will get that meant that we will get flashbacks from the series. So and I was very excited about that.
Yeah, and it is exciting, and boy, they just really, I mean, it's absolutely perfect. And as far as I'm concerned, it feels legitimate. It feels true to what I've read so far about Moraine. And I know I'm pronouncing the words wrong, and I so apologize about the names.
Don't worry. There are 15 different pronunciations of her word, but I say Moraine, and there's a lot of other pronunciations.
Yes, and to be honest with you, she is one of the most important characters in the story, and you know that from the beginning. You know that there's no question that you're not misled in any way about what's going on, and the costumes, Stubble, that we do see in this trailer. Like before I get to my countdown part, so to speak, but the costumes are just lovely.
Yes.
The colors are perfect in the background. I wanted to see flowing costumes. I needed to see the sense of motion, and we do even see a sense of motion in not just in the costumes but also in the locations, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
These production designers who created the world just really brought together so many beautiful elements of what we were expecting to see in this series. And you know,
Yes.
I also think, Stubble, that when we start to see um, the actual series, we're going to see a lot more on the basis of the cinematography side, because you couldn't really see it in the trailer was not long enough for us to see that. But I have a sense that we're even going to see how spectacular the overall cinematography is in this series, which can't be made apparent in a 2 or 3 minute video. But as the series progresses, I have a feeling we're going to be blown away by that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention on the costumes,
Yes.
because we
Yes.
have the very beautiful dresses and the very beautiful set design in the White Tower and the Aes Sedai and all of that. But what really stuck out to me, it was how the clothes on the main characters, the young people and the ones in the village, how they inform us on the character, because they live far off, nowhere near a trader to buy finished clothes from, so all their clothes are homemade, and that shows. From the only people who have a little money and can buy clothes, it's maybe Egwene, because she's the innkeeper's daughter, she's the mayor's daughter, so she has a little more wealth than the others, so she has a decorated clothes and outfits, but the others are homemade, and it shows, and it tells a lot of the character. And the blacksmith, his Perrin, his outfit looks like the outfit of a blacksmith. And Rand, who has a shepherd, he has a woolly jumper on, and that looks homemade. And so it not just that it looks pretty, it tells a story as well.
Yeah, and they needed to keep it authentic to that. We wouldn't, I have, and I'm sure you have seen many videos of people who do costume designs and who are purists, and how they'll say, well, that's in the wrong time period, or that doesn't fit. Or we can even see undergarments that they wouldn't be wearing, that are modern undergarments under period clothing that, people wouldn't wear. And I think that for this particular trailer and series, we're not going to see anything that is inaccurate. We're going to see things that
Yeah.
are authentic and that make sense. Even down to what you said in the details of someone having, a costume that looks like it might have been produced or handmade at an expensive clothing, vendor. And they kind of even mention, they talk about a little bit about what they have available to them in the book.
Yeah.
And how some of them have, I guess, maybe perhaps never even gone to a place where you could buy something like that, as you already mentioned, let alone even think about paying for something like that. So it's
Yeah.
very important. And you also mentioned something that I think is very interesting, and it is the sense that there is we do find out in the trailer that Moraine is that there are these 5 young people, and they are young. They're young adults
Yeah.
who are just on the brink of trying to figure out what their lives are going to be like. And they very cleverly put something at the end of the video where one of the characters says, are we ever going to go back home? Like it's kind of like where they've crossed the point of no return. But perhaps this one character has realized that, and I think that's actually in the book, right, Stubble, where he asked that question. But I thought it was very clever to do that because, you know, as I said before, the thing that I loved about this series and still love is how Jordan eases you in slowly so that when you're ready to learn certain things and certain facts about this world, it's not all immediate and drilled into you. He was at a point where he came to the realization that his life was never going to be the same. And after seeing this trailer, you can understand why his life would be forever altered. I mean, what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And you see the different characters. How? Oh, I don't find the words. You see the character in those conversations as well, because Perrin is the stable one, the one who don't want adventure, who is very thoughtful, even though he's big and burly and strong. He's the gentle giant, whilst Egwene is the one who's very ambitious and wants to get out and see the world. And so, and I think she sees to the heart of a problem really quickly, and she could see that no, they were never going to get home again. So yeah, I think it rings true to me, at least.
Yes. And, I think that, let's say if those are the highlights or some of the highlights, because there was actually quite a lot in this trailer. And you and I couldn't cover this entire trailer, or at least we're not going to cover every single detail in the trailer. But what I can say is that it was just so enjoyable to watch. And I also do want to say, for a person who's trying to figure out, gee, am I going to watch this series? Something else that's very special about it is that it's packed with characters on both sides. Let's say whatever side you want to choose, where it's just has that substance to it, where it's not one or two people we're talking about. So I think that adds a certain dimension to the story. And I think you kind of need that, because I think that people need to see complex stories to really kind of enjoy this type of a world. So I did want to talk a little bit about Rosalind Pike being, and we did speak about her briefly a few moments before, but as far as I'm concerned, from what I can see from the trailer, I think that she is absolutely perfect in the role. And as an actress, there's very little that she hasn't done on her resume, and she was a Bond girl as well. So what are your thoughts about her as the lead character, Stubble?
I think it was perfect casting. A few complain because in the books, Moraine is very short, but she wields a big club or something like that. But she's very short. So some people complain that she's too tall. The same thing that Wolverine when they now I lost his name. Hugh Jackman.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the same thing here. At the beginning they thought she was too tall, but I thought she's perfect, and she has this perfect aura for Moraine, and her experience was really helpful, I guess. I think for the young cast, she was a mentor both in the TV series as Moraine, as well as Rosalind Pike off screen for the young actors too. I think she was really took a big responsibility in representing the young actors when dealing with the studio and so on. I think she was very protective of them, and I think she's perfect for Moraine. She has that voice and that cadence in her voice and in her acting that's it commands respect.
It certainly does. And, it's very interesting. It's almost like life is imitating art as Moraine in the story, and taking the five under her wing now as a senior actor, being a mentor to these five young actors. And they do have a sense of, I think what's very interesting is the sense of naiveness. And I have to be careful with this word when I say naiveness, but perhaps just inexperience is more.
Innocence.
Yes, their innocence, if you will. And I don't necessarily, it is true. These actors are playing characters that are very innocent, and you can clearly see it even in the trailer. And it's refreshing to see that, because you're going to, if you're inexperienced and they've never been out of, let's say, out of the Two Rivers area. I know that's not the name of the town, but let's just say in that area. um you are going to be inexperienced, and they're just going along with this and trying to figure it out. And it does, that feeling is incredibly strong in the Eye of the World, where they are talking to one another, trying to figure out what exactly is going on here. And I remember, being at that stage in my life and having those same feelings as well. You're going along with it. And thank God they have Moraine there, kind of leading the way. And the other thing that I was going to say is, what I want to do is, after we've kind of like just talked about how incredible this trailer is, I want to start our countdown of the top 5 things that we're looking forward to in the series. And, from this, as indicated by this trailer. And you've already mentioned your number 5, which was, seeing Moraine chant in the beginning of the trailer, which just really, Stubble, I have to say, and as I said it before, which is so incredible. There's another actress in the story. I can't remember her name, but I've watched her in so many movies and shows over the years, and I didn't know she was going to be in this. And she's the one who's, I believe, talking to Moraine while Moraine is doing, taking the oath.
Yeah. Oh, I don't remember her name now, but she's Oscar nominated, I think. She for Hotel Rwanda.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
She was in that film with Don Cheadle.
Yeah.
I
She plays the Amelin Seats, who's called Swan Sanche.
Yes. Okay, that's wonderful. She is fantastic. I love this actress, and like I said, I've seen her in so many movies and films and shows through the years, and it's a shame I can't remember her name just now. But when I saw her, I got excited too, and I think that was, they were very careful about who they picked for the senior roles, and that also makes can help with the authenticity and the way that something comes across. But my number 5 thing that, counting down from 5 to 1, my number 5 thing was, I'm most interested in seeing or learning more about, let's say, the Dark One's army and the bad guys, because
Yeah.
I just like to see strong characters like this. And what I'm hoping that I'm going to see in the story is that, they're just like any other human. Maybe they're not, but just like any other human or creature in the story. And, what their motivations are to kind of like cast a shadow over this entire world and destroy everything. We got a hint of it at the beginning of the book, The Eye of the World, in that prologue. And I think that it was trying to give you a sense of, this is when things go terribly wrong. But I also wanted to learn a little bit more about that side, the baddies and this dark army. And I'm sure as I progress in more books, I'll understand a little bit more. But it intrigued me much more, seeing it in a live action sense. Especially there's one scene where Moraine is looking up towards a hillscape, and you can see these glowing lights that are coming down from the hillscape, kind of zooming on down. And I said, oh, that's a beautiful effect. That looks great. You can see that they're coming, and it's going to be hard to stop these guys. But then we also had some, sort of like hand-to-hand combat action parts. And then we also saw some incredible things in addition to fighting that. So that's my number 5.
Yeah, and my number 4 is related to that. That's just this segment. It includes all the Trollocs and the Fades, or the mid-roll as they called the Shadowspawn. But it's primarily when Tam fights the Trollocs in the cabin at his farm. You see a short scene where he draws a sword and he attack the Trollocs, because for a long time I wasn't sure if they were going to include that, because in the early promotional material we knew that arrived in Irma's Field, or Two Rivers, as they call it in the TV series. And we knew that they arrived there, but in the books they go back. Spoilers for the book and the TV series to some degree here, but it's just in the beginning. In the books they go back and and get attacked there at the farm. But that wasn't sure in the early promotional material, because many of us thought that they will cut that and have everyone at the village, because it will take extra time. They had to shorten things and so on. But when seeing Tam fighting the Trollocs in the farm, inside in their cabin, that was very exciting for me, because then I knew that they were going to go back, and we get to see Tam fighting, and he has a special sword, and there's a background he has a background with that that I won't spoil too much with that. Maybe I will spoil a little bit about it at a later point of one of my five things. Yes.
Well, it's funny because my number 4 is literally actual battle. In other words, battle scenes.
Okay.
And, whether or not they include swords or magic or whatever, I want to see some of that battle, because it is discussed in detail in the book. And so, I feel it's not that I like to see slaughter, but I do like to see how people respond in times of battle and when they're trying to fight, for something like this. And I really want to see that. And I think I suspect after seeing this trailer, we will see a lot of battle scenes. And even if it's internal, where people are having dreams and they may have these inner conflicts going on, I want to experience that and see how they've interpreted it for the live action. And from what we've seen, and as you just mentioned just a few moments ago, I think there's going to be a lot of it in this series.
Yes. And in future series and future books, there are much bigger battles and and also the small battles we have here. But there are battles that consist of hundreds of thousands of people.
Wow.
So I don't know how they're going to pull it off, but it will be interesting to see.
Yes. So Stubble, what is your number 3 thing that you are most looking forward to from the trailer?
Okay, now there's time for my sadistic side to shine through here.
Ooh.
I don't love it, but I love to see the White Cloak burning the Aes Sedai.
Oh, yes, right at the stake, right?
Yeah, because in the books we don't see them killing Aes Sedai. We know that they capture and kill Aes Sedai, but it happens off screen. Here we're going to see her being burned at the stake, and I have my own theories on how they're going to achieve, because potentially she should be able to channel, to use the magic to get out of the situation. But I have my own thoughts on how they're solving that, and it has to do with the Ogier, Loyal.
Yes.
It's connected to him, but I won't say any more than that.
No, it's very exciting. And obviously, when I was watching the trailer, that scene definitely grabbed my attention, because everybody knows what that means when you're tied up against a stake and there's fire at your feet. Everyone knows what that means. I mean, that's definitely and it was done so well. And even in that scene, the costume was beautiful, and the way it was filmed, you could clearly see her face. Just oops, sorry, it's a dog. It just was extraordinary. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, and then we see in that scene, or there's 2 scenes. There's the burning, and then there's where he walks away and sits and have a drink. And I don't know if you noticed this, but first we see her burn, and the worst thing is that she's a yellow Aes Sedai, the yellow who does the healing, who never does anything harmful, or very rarely. And but then we see him walk away, and we see him with bloody fingers, with a ring that he puts on on his, I don't know what you call it, on his belt or whatever. And he wipes his hand, which is bloody, possibly cutting off her fingers to get her ring.
Is that the gentleman who's in white?
Yes, that's okay. Aemon Valda. He's not introduced in book 1. He's introduced later, but he has replaced other White Cloaks, so to speak, in the first series. And then we see him sit back and take up a metal goblet, and in the reflection you see the burning Aes Sedai as he takes a drink. And he relishes his deeds.
He's sitting there smiling, very smug as he's drinking and sitting down at his table.
Yeah, watching her burn.
Yes. It's very interesting, and certainly it absolutely wonderful interpretation of what happens. And of course, as you said, we're not quite sure the final outcome there, but it certainly is attention grabbing and beautifully done. Nearly perfect. Now my number 3 is really just, I'm curious as to how the team is going to work together when I say that, and what they will and will not accept along the journey. And like I'm assuming, or at least I'm hoping, that we're going to see parts of that, where an individual will say, I'm not okay with this. And, someone talking someone down from a ledge, so to speak, let's say metaphorically speaking, but I want to see the team actually work together. So, we have seen some shots where a few of them are standing, maybe the 3 of them are standing together, and they're using the power, or, coming collectively together to defend one another. I want to see more of that as well. And, seeing it in live action is very different from reading about it. So I want to see how they decide to put together, the ensemble, if and when they do decide to work in that way. So that was my number 3, how the team actually works together and at a time of crisis.
When you say the team, do you mean the young people, or do you mean general teams? Or
I mean the young people, and of course, essentially they've grown up together, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And there are all these relationships they have with one another that, may or may not contribute to how they would respond. Perhaps you're willing to take an arrow for someone if you really care about this person. But I have a feeling that growing up in a town like that, where everyone else, and now you're taking an adventure with people that you've known for so long, is very different than sort of like enlisting in something and you're brought together with strangers that you don't know. It's a very different type of dynamic when you're fighting for something like that, and it's almost like a family where know one another, and you know each other's habits and where you came from and how you grew up, and everything about one another. What you're due for a family is very different than what you would do for a pack of strangers. And I think it's going to be very interesting to explore that, here, or even see that in the show.
Yeah, in the Died World, in the book, you have some of that when Rand and Matt travel together. When one of them is down, the other picks them up and helps them along. And so absolutely, there's a bunch of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your next one, Stubble?
Yeah, that would be my number 3, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when we see, in general, the expanded storyline for Logain.
Oh.
And we see him. One scene I like is when he's melting his cage. I don't know if you noticed, but he has this cage around him, and there's glowing things.
Yeah, these tall things around him, like a fence, but they're they look like spikes or stakes around him.
Yeah, he's been shielded by the Aes Sedai. Now he's not shielded, and he's melting his cage because you see how the red things are moving down and they're going up into ash and so on. So we'll see when he breaks free, and they will try to recapture him. But in general, I want to see the expanded Logain piece of the story, and the reason they have that is because he will probably be kind of crazy to some extent because he's used the power for a while, and it's a way to show what's waiting for one of our main characters further on down the road. Because spoiler alert, one of the male characters will be able to channel eventually.
Yes.
And that brings its own set of problems. But one of those problems is that he will go crazy.
And they've indicated that that's what happens to men when they wield the power, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why they have captured Logain. That's why they're taking him to be gentle, because they can't have him go crazy and blow up a village or something.
Exactly. Now my number two, and I really do like that scene. I think that the way that they showed it, we don't really see a lot of repeats in this trailer. You know, it's some very unique moments and some very unique uses of defense mechanisms in the trailer continue to keep you very interested in what's coming up next. So my number two thing that I'm most excited for is kind of a little obvious, but just to see the power being used just in so many different ways. And I have a feeling it's going to be and all different types, the versions of the power, let's say. And I want to see how it's interpreted here, but I also want to see more this relationship that Moiraine has with the man who's her, I guess, her ward or her. I want to see. Yes, I want to see more of that relationship because it looks really, really interesting. For example, in the trailer, she talks to him, and you know they have like what I would consider is it's an intimate friendship relationship. Let's say they clearly have this bond that appears to be unbreakable. And so I think it's very interesting that she has this person who supports her. And I really like that. I really like that she has this companion, if you will, but he's more than a companion. He's probably somebody that she talks to and confides in every day before she even does anything. And so I think that relationship, or at least to see that he is also part of her network and it's really, really important. And we got that, like you could see that from the trailer that it was an important relationship. So it's kind of two things in one, because she is a magic user. To see that final use, or let's say an introduction to what's possible in this world, along with her relationship with the warder, is something that's my number two of seeing as it progresses in the story. What is your number two, Stubble?
I just rechecked. My last one was my number two. Now we come to my number
sorry.
one.
I'm sorry. You're number one, Stubble?
Yes, and this will be some world building spoilers for later books and later series as well. But I won't go into any plot details. It's just one short second in the trailer towards the end, and it's a snowy landscape, and we see Illianer. I think he's the first captain of the companions. So I don't know if you remember this because it's very short. He has his armor. He more or less looks like a knight with a cape. And then we have someone who's clothed in baggy clothing and has two spears on his or her back with a buckler. And it's a very different type of warrior. And these are the Aiel. And it's a flashback. And here's, I will give you a bit of an insight from the book that you may not have gotten. In the early chapters, there's a character who has fever dreams as they're traveling through a forest, and he remember the fever dreams depict these things that's happening here, and it's called in the books it's called the Blood Snows, and it's from the Aiel War, when the Aiel invaded the. They live on the other side of a big mountain range. And for reasons they invaded, and things happen there that's of great consequence to the whole the whole series. And the Aiel, I can give you a taste of what the Aiel are. One of their inspirations was the Native Americans, Cheyenne Indians, because it had to do with the traveling that they did in their history. And then there's a influence of Zulu warriors, and we can almost say Vikings as well. And they have a very interesting honor-based culture that's you don't see anywhere else. So, and it's my favorite culture in the series, but you haven't experienced them yet.
No, I haven't. I actually looked at the trailer as you were telling me this for that scene, and I do see what you're talking about. And there's a guy who's wearing a yellow cloak, and someone is kind of like grabbing the yellow cloak. I'm telling you, Stubble, the imagery in this trailer is just phenomenal. I mean, it's just so incredibly intriguing that it's just incredible to watch. So I can see the excitement for that. And of course, I don't know that part of the story yet, but I guess maybe we'll see it. I better progress forward a few books to catch up.
And the man in the armor, he's the first captain of companions, because see, he has 9 bees, which is the symbol for Ilion, which is a city that you don't know of yet. And he has 4 yellow stripes on his arms, which signifies that he's the first captain.
Okay, I definitely have to learn more about this part for sure. And of course, my number one thing that I'm looking forward to is learning who the dragon is. Now, incidentally, I know who it is, but the actual experience of seeing it in live action is going to be a little different for me. But I think that everybody is curious about that because, Moraine does say, it's one of the 5 of you. And there's a lot of speculation, at least for people who are unfamiliar with the story. It's like, I wonder who it is. But I think that it was nicely situated and nicely presented to the viewer that one of those 5 young adults is going to be very, very important in fighting the Dark One. So I thought the setup of it was perfectly placed.
Yeah,
and
in the books, it's pretty obvious who it is fairly early on. But in the TV series, it won't be, unless people spoil it.
Yes. And even if they did, it's not going to detract from the enjoyment of this series because it is so incredible and there's so much more to see. And I'm just absolutely thrilled for the series. And I did just want to thank you, Stubble, for taking the time out today to go through the top 5 things that we are looking forward to after seeing the trailer for the Wheel of Time TV series, and also talking about this incredible soundtrack that they made for this show. So thank you for taking the time out today to discuss it.
Yeah. And it would be remiss of me I just want to add a thing to one of my answers. And it was my last answer about the Aiel. They certainly have a flair of the Fremen from Dune in them as well.
Yes. Okay. That's interesting. And I didn't know that.
No, because you don't know them yet.
Yes. Okay.
It was very, very nice. this conversation.
Yes, it was. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Stubble. And I look forward to the next video. And for everybody watching, thank you for watching. We sure hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, we're going to have more videos coming up because the series is starting soon. And we definitely are going to continue to talk about the Wheel of Time series and focus on the Eye of the World book, upcoming videos on the channel. So thank you for joining us today, and see you soon, hopefully in the next video. And remember, be kind.